All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here. I just wanted to say that I'm really glad that we had Chris Hagel at the beginning here, because I think he's done a lot of our job for us. He had some really interesting ideas about policy and just getting started with this implementation. So it's going to be an interesting discussion here. So I'm Catherine Livick. I'm from AESD 112 in Vancouver, Washington. I'm the Instructional Technology Coordinator, and I've got my colleague Christina here with me as well.
Welcome, everyone.
So again, thank you for joining this. I just want to say that we are not experts. Nobody is really a true expert on this yet. We have some people with some more experience than others, but the idea is to stay flexible and to learn together. And I was something that occurred to me while Chris was speaking this morning. Well, both of the Chris's were speaking previously, I guess, is that this is a lot like COVID. Like, here is this big thing that is suddenly a foundational change to the way that we operate in our profession, and we're supposed to know everything about it already. Cool. Like, that's not happening. So we do really have to kind of create this learning together. So just wanted to talk about a couple of considerations to frame the discussion, and then we're going to have everybody just pop in with what they're thinking. When you're thinking about this from a policy level, you've got to start with values. How do you identify the values of your school, your district, your region, your community with regard to AI? What is the point of it? And as it was mentioned this morning, why would you be using it? And there's more than one reason, obviously, for that. We're going to have thoughts about how to develop effective policies and procedures. That's kind of the meat of it, but we have to get there. And I think thinking about this as an iterative process, like we're going to be in a cycle. We're going to have to revisit any policies that we have created, because this is going to change. It's changed so much, so rapidly just in the last 8, 9, 10 months, that it's not going to stop doing that. It's probably just going to get faster. One of the things that I actually really enjoyed from Peninsula's materials was that they did a really good job of framing out what you should be thinking about, what the priorities should be. But I've also seen some good information about who should be on the team. So going forward with our discussion, just keeping in mind that when you create a team, you might start with a smaller team, but eventually it's going to involve a lot more stakeholders in your district. You obviously have to have your CTO or CIO, your technology folks need to be there, your superintendents who are guiding the policy, your educators, your teacher librarians. Let's not forget the people that are not classroom teachers that have a dog in this race. The finance and legal folks who are obviously going to have some ideas. And then we actually went to a pretty good AI session last week at the Digital Equity Summit. And one of the things that was pointed out is don't forget to include the union in your conversations, because your teachers union is going forward, have ideas about these policies as well. And it would be really great if you started out from the very beginning having a discussion with them.
And there's a group that is really important to my heart in this that is missing, and that's our families and students. We really need to include the families, our community, because they're the ones that are starting with it. At home, we're not even part of some of those conversations. So remember your community, your parents, and your students.
That parent education component is kind of hard to think about at the very beginning of something new. And we ran into this again with COVID. We had to teach the teachers how to use the remote learning stuff, but then the students had to do it too, and the families needed to know what was going on. So yeah, we can never forget who we're working for here. So I am going to open this up for discussion, and we have a few questions here. Of course, we can bring up other things, but we're going to start just with thinking about your current policies. Do you think that your current tech use policies will be effective for ChatGPT or generative AI? And I have a really long participants list to look at here, but I think I'll be able to see if someone has a hand raised. So let's use the hand raise function, because we want to make sure everybody gets heard as much as we can. And it's okay if the answer is no. If you want to speak up about this, you could talk about what your concerns are, what you think you need to do with your current policies. Don't be shy.
Catherine, this is Jennifer from Auburn.
Jennifer, thank you.
I'm not going to steal Gavin's thunder here, but if I hear the question correctly, what are we doing? Currently, we're just in the beginning stages of gathering information, gathering our group of interested parties, and that's we're staying curious with our stakeholders, people who really want to move this ball forward, but also with an eye on the policies. So I'm really happy to see some of the tools that we can now leverage as a good jumping off point. So there's been some fears. There's been discussion around, oh, well, we need to buy all these tools to, detect whether it's being used or not. And so those are, yeah. So anyway, so we're just, if Gavin has anything to add, but we're in the beginning of that. We have to revise our policy and procedure to really have clear references of appropriate usage and things like that. So that's what we're at.
Thank you for being brave and speaking out there the first time. I know it can be a little weird. Any other commentary on that first one? I want to move this along because I'm cognizant we only have about 10 minutes left in this particular breakout, but also I want to make sure people have a chance to speak.
Looks like we have Gavin with his hand up that kind of tags what Jennifer just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is not showing up for me. I apologize, Gavin. Please go for it.
That's all right. I got, thanks for throwing me under the bus, Jennifer. So just that first question about are current tech use policies effective, and that's what I've been looking at over the last couple of weeks. And for the most part, they really are. For the most part, like when it comes to like our teachers' kind of fears around like academic dishonesty and things like that, there's really nothing that isn't covered there, which is nice, right? And so what it becomes is an opportunity to learn new technology, and it really becomes that instructional lens that we need to put on it about, okay, how are we going to bring these into our classrooms, rather than well, let's just make sure we've got a solid policy before we allow anyone to do anything innovative.
Thank you, Gavin. Sorry, I wasn't, for some reason, it's not showing me people's hands, and I thought I was so clever having it open already so I could see the list, but it just doesn't want me to know. Anyone else before we move on to our next little discussion point? All righty. So what about our second point here? Are you using ChatGPT or other generative AI tools personally or within your school and district? And what thoughts are you having about that?
I'll go on that. I'm Kim Gimlet from Stevenson Carson, and I've been using AI since probably February of last year. I've currently started using Grammarly for my emails and for any documents that I personally write. And I find that Grammarly could be a really good tool for my my students that are in special education, as well as some of my twice exceptional kids that are just thirsty to be able to use words, to be able to express what they have in their brains. This just so it's such a great tool. And yet my district is preventing us from using it, from kids being able to use it on their computers in school, which I totally understand. But we don't have any plans at all for any discussions in our organization. It's just been restriction, and so the any usage of the tools are going to be used individually. I mean, our teachers don't have it restricted, but our students do. But I do believe that the Grammarly AI is a really effective tool to be able to use. I really like it. And I also think that the translation tools for AI, especially just the recent update to the Chat GPT number 4, there's also some really great tools to be able to help us do webs now, web design, like web multi mind mapping kind of things. It's just moving so fast, and I just would like to be a part of it. So that's all.
Thank you, Kim. I saw Sarah had a hand up. Maybe, yeah.
I was just going to mention, so Sarah out in Kashmir, at the middle school. Anyways, it's been crazy useful for translations. It is saving so much time. And my people who usually do my translating for me is just double checking it. And there's not a lot to say about it. They're just like, this is perfect. So we've started using that like last spring. And it is, I mean, it's made it so that we can translate every single piece of information we put out, which before we had to pick and choose because it was all based on manpower hours. And we're being able to translate pretty much 100% of what we put out of our schools, which has been amazing.
Sarah, what program are you using? I use Canva for translating, but since you've been able to use it at like a district level, I was wondering what tool you're using.
Oh, Chat GTP. Like
Okay.
I just say, translate this to Spanish, and I take a letter and I throw it in there and it spits it out. It is super fast. It's not great with formatting. Of course, Chat GTP doesn't do the formatting piece. So if you've got a Google Doc or something, it's almost better to use Google Translate. But when it's just a straight up letter or doesn't have a lot of formatting involved, it's slick. It's really slick.
Thank you, Sarah. Canva does it in bulk. So you can do flyers and documents and other things in a bulk setting.
Okay, I didn't know that because I do a lot of Canva, but then I have to have somebody translate it for me.
It's one of the apps. So go explore the apps inside Canva. They're adding new stuff every day.
Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's just going to be in everything. It's not going to be, let's go to Chat GPT, so we're going to have to learn how it works within these different tools. And I did,
which is why banding doesn't work, because it keeps being iterated into Microsoft and Google and products we use.
Exactly. I also like the point about the special ed students. I was a special ed teacher at the beginning of my career, so that's close to my heart. I think we need to keep in mind what a great tool this could be if used properly for our students who need additional supports. We've got just a few more minutes here. So what discussions are you having at your school district organization? Anything that we haven't already mentioned that you're like, hey, we're discussing this? Is anyone else having this discussion? Nathan?
Nathan has his hand up.
Yeah, go for it, Nathan.
Hi, Nathan in Evergreen Public down in Vancouver. And the way we've started very similar, it sounds like, to Auburn, where we started with our technology process based on privacy policies of like ChatGPT. We have permission slips that we use for websites and programs for families to sign off on. And so that's how we're initiating some of the resources that we're using through some of our existing procedures we have in place. And then as new apps become available, teachers are requesting access to them. And so we review them in our software committee together, and specifically looking at the privacy policy and then moving on from there. One of the things that we're really starting to roll with, and we're looking to provide some specific resources around AI and what is it? How has it been used in the past, as we've had adaptive resources previously and have been using it. So just building an awareness of what is it for our teachers, and then going forward, how do we get into what does that look like? How might this impact a lesson plan and how students are using it? So we had a teacher last year who took a writing prompt in secondary and ask it to write a response from 3 different perspectives from a social studies point of time, and then students were able to take a side based on each of those perspectives and start to interact. And so the teacher was saying that while they had done this lesson with students about writing from different points of view in history over the years, usually that was like maybe a 2-week lesson where they were researching and writing the content. Well, now they were able to do a quick research and have a perspective written within within a few minutes, and very quickly able to get to different points of view. And so that's just one example where we're trying to think about how our lessons might be changed or adjusted by using some of these tools, and really thinking about how do we provide that training and support to our teachers.
That's awesome, Nathan. I love hearing all those examples of the ways that people are using it creatively and innovatively. And we're not just generating text about, we're using it for a specific purpose that we then can get students to engage their brains around looking into that text. And we have about 45 seconds left. So I think we're going to have to wrap up. Nathan, we will also be in touch from 112 because I think we can help you out for sure. And anyone else, who is wondering about where there will be resources, there's going to be a lot more coming from AESD. We have our Win for CS will be AI themed for teachers this coming year. And then, of course, all of your local regional ESDs will be here to help you as much as possible. So they're going to boot us back to this main room, I believe, in a minute, and then you'll be able to choose a different breakout session. So that might be a little jarring. So I'm going to stop talking so it's not so weird when we get booted, and we'll see you later. Thank you so much. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us here in room C, where we were bouncing around a little bit, but now I think we're good. Thanks for coming. I'm Catherine Livick from ESD 112. I'm the Instructional Technology Coordinator, and I have my colleague Christina Wombold here with me as well. And Christy, did you want to say hi?
I said hello, everyone. I think we're having some audio issues, but thank you everyone for being here. Our information is on the screen, and if you're part of 112, we'll be reaching out to many of you very soon to start our user groups and other resources. We do AI for a bunch of different audiences, including our secretaries and building staff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christina. We had some pretty good luck with Chris from Peninsula this morning speaking to us. Both of our Chris's were great, but specifically, I think that Peninsula School District has made this discussion a little easier for us. This is a tricky one. I'm not going to lie. I think people didn't want to moderate this one. I was like, well, I'll do it. It's okay. I don't figure I don't have to be an expert, because that's kind of how this is working. We're not experts yet. There are some people who are kind of holding themselves up as experts. There are people who are farther along in thinking about it, but this is still very new, very quickly evolving and changing. So I think it's better to think of ourselves as co-learners, that we need to be flexible and create this, reality together. And it occurred to me this morning that this was a lot like what happened in COVID. All of a sudden, March of 2020, hi, here's a new thing that is going to completely change the foundations of how you work in this profession. And we expect that you already know how to handle it. Okay, no, that's not how that worked. That took some doing, right? And I think this is very similar in some ways. It's here, it's happened, the change has occurred. now we have to embrace it and roll with it. So I like where Peninsula started with their thinking about this. And so their frame kind of influenced the considerations that I'm going to ask you to think about today. Starting from a values perspective, I think is a really great place to start for any kind of strategic planning that you're doing. How do you identify your district's values with regards to AI? Not just your why of why would we use it or not use it, or when, but like, what are our values? What are our values of our community and our school and our district? And that's going to inform the rest of the policy that you make. How do you go about developing effective policies and procedures for use of AI by staff and students? There's going to be some differences there, and we have to start getting into the deep end about how we create those policies. And something to keep in mind is because it's so rapidly changing, this is going to be something that you need to make sure you have the timing for how often you're revisiting. Is going to be a little shorter interval maybe than some other things that don't change so quickly. And one of the things that we've talked about is who needs to be on the team. And of course, you start out with a little smaller group, but it does need to expand at some point. You have to start with your tech people, your CTO, your CIO. They need to be there from the beginning. Your superintendents who inform the policy, your teachers, your educators, your teacher librarians, other educators who are not certified classroom teachers are also have some important input in these kinds of decisions. Finance and legal always have some opinions about this stuff, and we don't blame them. They need to be in on this conversation too. And one of the things that we have been discussing for the last week or so, we went to the Digital Equity Summit last week, and somebody brought up, don't forget to include the union. Your teachers union is going to be creating, policy of their own around this, and there's going to be discussions that where they need to be included, and it's better to kind of partner from the beginning than kind of come up against it later. And as Christina pointed out in our last session, we have to get families in there as well, because
And
that
students.
and
We're not
students.
doing something to the students. The students already know this is out there. So we need to embrace them in policies and procedures so that their viewpoints are part of the conversation. Because students are using this at home in all sorts of other ways. We cannot ban it. I know everybody keeps saying ban it, but how does that work for equity then? If I can't use it at school, but I can use it at home because my parents allow it, we just have to start thinking about the equity pieces.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we have about 12 minutes left looking at the breakout room timer. And so can we discuss everything we need to discuss, even around just policy in that time? No, we can't. But that's why your ESD in your region is here. AESD has a lot of information coming up for you. We'll have Win for CS is aimed at informing teachers around AI all year. We'll have this series. So at least we all know we're not alone, but I'm going to just kind of go through our little framework for discussion here. We'll see how many bullets we get to, and hopefully everybody will get a chance to pitch in if they would like to. So go ahead and use the raise hand facility if you can. Who wants to jump in? Do you think your current tech use policies will be effective or are already effective for generative AI like ChatGPT? Or just go ahead and unmute if you're feeling shy about the hands. It's fine.
Well, that one's easy because it's no. They're not there. I mean, our policy, yeah, educational use only for the technology. So as long as you're doing for education, it's great. But yeah, not covered.
So in a general way, that's you have a policy that's sort of umbrellas over it, but yeah, it's nothing as specific as it needs to be. Anybody else?
I'm sure somebody's thinking this in their head, but the policy and procedures really need to extend to where this is going to come into the environment that's already in play at your school district, such as Google and Microsoft 365. They're already adding in AI technology as well as Canva, we're all very familiar with. So not only thinking about ChatGPT, but what about all these other baked in AI? So whether you have a policy that bans or not, we're going to have a lot of conversation around the AI that is built into our systems that we really can't turn off.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And that does actually leads us into our second kind of bullet point. Are you using generative AI or ChatGPT within your district or your organization? I mean, the answer is probably. If you're using some of these other tools, you kind of are, because it's already built in. So, but as far as using it intentionally, Kim, what'd you have to say to us?
Ryan, I'll answer your question in the chat too.
Oh, sorry.
I use it lots of times. I use it for verifying grammar in my weekly newsletter. I use it to make sure that my more formal document is readability. I mentioned this in the superintendent's group. I make sure that the vocabulary level is not too high. I use it for different things like that. And then I use, so that I don't have to pay an employee, I'll say in the letter and translate it to Spanish. And we do have a person who proofs that, so that the language doesn't get too high or the wrong word is not used or whatever, but it saves them from having to punctuate and do with the whole translation. They're just making sure that it's regionally appropriate and that the words are words that our families would use. So we use it all the time. We are working to make sure we are using it as a tool to improve, not a tool to write. You know, does that make sense? I don't know if I'm saying.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, I've been starting with non-classroom teachers. So I'm doing a series called EdTech in the Workplace. And I'm starting with all the building secretaries, all the principals, all the other people involved in the school district that can use these tools to be more efficient. When I start talking about teachers, that goes into students. And so I'm not quite ready for the student conversation yet in my role. So I'm really focusing on others. Right now, Ryan, the WASTA does not have a policy at this point. They're working on it. They have a special committee, but the Department of Educational Technology at the federal level has a 135-page document around AI policies and procedures. I summarized that down to 10 bullet points using AI, and it is a pretty good start.
Sorry,
I will just add, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Ryan. I thought I saw you talking and you were still muted, but I didn't. Okay, sorry. Kim, go ahead.
I don't want to monopolize. I do think that we do need to be cautious when we talk about how it's being used by your support staff. That when you ask for assistance, I'm a superintendent, if I ask for assistance, I need to make sure it's my own thoughts and my own words going in. But it really comes in handy for HR, for job descriptions, comes in handy for those kinds of pieces as well.
Really handy for data displays and data aggregation and analyzation. So yes, I totally understand we want to sound like ourselves. We don't want to sound like a robot. But there's a lot of other tools in there. The spreadsheets and visualizations it can make are amazing and take a lot of time.
Oh, the other piece is if you tried to do something, for those of you who are kind of like to see where ChatGPT is at, if you ask it something about like the war in Israel, not to bring up a taboo subject kind of right now, but if you ask it, it'll send it back to you and say, no data is found. We have only current data from a date and time. So you know, I mean, you can tell.
Yeah. And Ryan put in the chat, how are you documenting in the writing that ChatGPT was used? And I think that's going to be something that we all have to get used to, just like we learned to do citations. It's going to be interesting to see how that evolves and like what will be the accepted way? How do you document it? And that's going to be interesting, and that's going to be one of the points that we have to work on teaching.
That will be a huge part of it. Currently, we have some friends of ours in the ed tech world that are kind of dabbling in this idea, and it seems to be around co-authorship.
Yep.
Saying that I created this with the assistance of, but we're both authors because I'm the human making the prompt and I'm the human deciding if this is useful or not and cleaning it up. But we don't have there's no direct policy on that, but the ed tech or the Department of Ed Tech did put something out about co-authorship in their documentation.
Yeah, that's going to be a thing for people to get used to. I don't know. I've read so much science fiction. I'm like, yeah, I want to work with a robot. It's cool, but not everybody is there yet.
Well, this is coming up with our ESD 112 normally does an art show every year, and it's around our district, like local district students turn in art, and they're having this conversation about the art show. Do they allow AI generated artwork to be turned in? Who would be the author? There's a whole bunch of ethical questions around that they're struggling with right now.
And there's going to be a whole bunch more policy stuff that comes in with generative image generation AI. And the fact that it's so easy to put someone into a video saying and doing things they might not otherwise do. And we've already had teachers victimized by students with this, and that's creepy. And that's not me saying I think it should be illegal. I'm just saying it's going to be another thing. I almost feel like we gotta do this other part first. Like there's so much, right? But yeah, that's a big one. So we're kind of branching out a little, and we only have about 4 minutes left on our timer before we get booted back into the main room. So I'm going to just go to the next one. What discussions are you having at your school, your district, your organization? Anything we haven't brought up already? What else are you hearing or talking about? And if that one's not doing it for you, concerns. Oh, Scott, thank you. Go ahead.
I think if speaking for the Riverview School District, we're pretty similar with, I think, most, where we're kind of forward thinking. Like this is not something that's going away. This is going to be part of what we're doing. It's the going slow before you go fast model. So I'm pretty sure that most people are under the, how do we bring this in a meaningful way? How do we make sure that kids and staff members are using it to promote digital citizenship, creative thinking, even using like higher levels of questioning, things like that. You can really get into some really cool things around design thinking and other things. It's just how do you support many different levels of either acceptability or integration and implementation strategies. So that we're in the infancy stage of where you're talking about creating a team and really we've been building a lot of this knowledge base. And I think the next step for us really is just to get people in the room together that finally are going to start digging into this. I think we've kind of stepped around the pond or beat around the bush. We're just ready to start doing.
Yeah, I think we're at the point where people were like, wait, leave it. We can't use this until we know more about it. But like we've mentioned several times, you can't ban it. It's already in everything and the kids are going to use it anyway. And so, yeah.
We're 30 days from the launch of AI. Most of us were introduced to ChatGPT November 30th of last year. We're almost a year into this. So the backpedaling and slowing down is past us at this point. We're already on the bus. And now we have to figure out what are the next steps. Ryan, I saw you unmute.
Well, it's just, we're talking here about how I'm uncomfortable requiring anybody to set up a ChatGPT account with school emails, just because then their private information is getting out there. What are we going to do around that? How do we utilize it where they're logging into it? Like a chat, if they did ChatGPT 3, like next semester, I am teaching an intro to AI class to students. but I'm going to make 30 separate emails because I'm also the tech director, so I can do that. And I'll know it's them, but it's not. They're going to only use it for the AI stuff, just to break it. So it's another issue we have is if we start making them do it so they can learn it in their English classes or whatever, we have privacy issues and stuff like that with it.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about all of our policies around privacy and what you're going to put into that. While I'm a big component of using it in my Excel spreadsheets and Google spreadsheets, I don't put student data in there. I explain the type of student. Please create X for, student 3. I'm not putting in their first and their last name and all that other information. So yes, you absolutely right. We have to be very careful with that discussion we have with our teachers before they start rolling this out to their students. That's why I'm working with the non-teachers right now.
I bet the State Data Privacy Alliance consortiums will have a lot to say about this too. It looks like our time is up, so I'm going to expect us to get shot through space back into the other room any minute now. Thank you so much for joining us.